This is the first video in a playlist of 6 videos where I will be describing and demonstrating the 7 musical elements: melody, form, harmony, rhythm, timbre, articulation, and dynamics. Throughout this whole semester, you will want to think about these musical elements when actively or critically listening to a musical work. Often we passively listen to music, not thinking about how it is constructed or structured. Using the 7 musical elements as a foundation will help us to gain deeper insight into not only how music is created and structured, but also why we feel a certain way when hearing a piece of music or find particular meaning in a piece of music. This first video in a playlist of 6 describing and demonstrating the 7 musical elements will be on melody and form. Melody is one of the universal elements of music. The technical definition for melody is a succession of single pitches that we hear as a recognizable whole. However, this can be very confusing on several levels. First, what are pitches? Pitch is the musical unit for frequency. Frequency refers to all the sounds we hear. This could be anything from a car driving by to the wind blowing to a bird chirping. Physically, all sounds are vibrations that travel through air and are then registered by the human ear and brain as a specific sound. Some sounds are perceived of as being musical, while some are perceived of as not musical. This can change from culture to culture and from one individual person to the next. However, a universal element of music is that all cultures perceive of frequencies as pitch, or a specifically recognized musical unit. Often, pitches are further organized into notes, which are specific names or symbols associated with pitches. In Western music, notes are based on a musical alphabet of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, or A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. These 7 notes of the Western musical alphabet can also be sounded at lower pitches, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and higher pitches, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's a second element that can be confusing about the definition of melody. A succession of single pitches might sound like this. This is not a melody. Rather, it is the accompaniment or part of a song or any musical work that supports the melody, providing a foundation or a backdrop. This would be the melody. When I combine this melody with the accompaniment, you will notice how the melody, or what we sometimes call the tune, stands out more. The melody is the thing we find ourselves humming, whistling, or singing after we hear a piece of music. You can think of a melody as the musical line that is most prominent and the focus of a musical work. But how is a melody constructed? A melody has structure, like a building. And like a building, the musician who creates a melody has to be a sonic architect, understanding how the individual pitches that make up a melody can make a satisfying and complete idea for the listener. One important aspect of melody is contour, or the shape or direction of a melody. A melody may have a very simple contour. For example, the first 3 notes of Mary Had a Little Lamb, or the opening to Joy to the World, both have the same contour, which is moving downward in pitch. A more complex contour would be the melody for Happy Birthday. Another aspect of a melody is range, or how high and how low a melody goes. Some melodies have a very small range. For example, the melody to Beethoven's Ode to Joy from his Ninth Symphony has a very narrow range. This is the lowest pitch, and this is the highest pitch. All the notes we hear when the melody is played as a whole fit between these two lowest and highest notes. Some melodies have a very wide range. For example, the American folk song Shenandoah, where the lowest note in the melody is and the highest is. Notice how much larger the range is between this lowest note and this highest note as compared to the previous melody. And we can hear many notes in between the lowest and highest note when I play the whole melody to Shenandoah. When constructing a melody, musicians also think about intervals, or the distance between each note of the melody. A narrow interval is referred to as having conjunct motion, and sometimes musicians will call this interval a step. You may have noticed that when I played the interval or distance between these two notes, they're only a step apart visually on the piano. A wider interval is referred to as having disjunct motion. And sometimes musicians will call this interval a leap, which, again, if we look at the piano, the interval between this note and this note requires me to make a big leap. We can have larger leaps like this one, or smaller leaps like this one. It is rare to find a melody that is entirely conjunct or entirely disjunct. Most melodies are a combination of both conjunct motion and disjunct motion. For example, if I play, most of the intervals in this melody are conjunct. Notice how there's only a step between each of those notes in that part of the melody. However, there are also moments in this melody where we see disjunct motion. A melody might also be consonant or dissonant. In music, consonance refers to a release or resolution. When we say a melody is consonant, there is a sense of completion or release. For example, if I play this melody, there is a sense of resolution or release or completion. By contrast, dissonance refers to tension in music. A melody that does not resolve and maintains a sense of tension or a need to resolve is dissonant. For example, all these elements of constructing a melody also inform how musicians structure an entire piece of music. Musical works, ranging from a song to a whole movement of a symphony, often consist of many different melodies. Each of these individual melodies will consist of individual phrases or parts or sections of a melody. Using Happy Birthday again as an example, you will notice that the first phrase is dissonant. This sounds unresolved, like a musical question that needs to be answered. The second phrase creates that sense of resolution through consonance. Now, the note I landed on is what we refer to as a cadence, which is the end point or musical destination for a phrase or a few phrases. A piece of music might have more than one melody happening at different times. when these melodies occur is what musicians refer to as form. Musicians will often label the first melody as A and the second melody as B. If there's a third melody, it's the C melody, fourth, the D melody, and so on. Now, one example of a commonly used musical form is binary form, which consists of an A melody followed by a B melody that closes out the piece. The traditional English carol Greensleeves is one such example. We first hear this A melody. Now the B melody that follows is distinct and different enough from the A melody that we can call it a B melody. Played together, A, B, we have a binary form. Now the A melody repeats, but it's still a binary form because it's the same melody. Now we have the contrasting B melody, which makes up the second part of this binary form. By contrast, ternary form refers to a musical work with three parts. One of the most common ternary forms is an A melody, sometimes repeated, followed by a contrasting B melody, and then the third and final section is a return of the A melody. The Harold Arlen composition Over the Rainbow, made famous by the movie The Wizard of Oz, uses this musical form. We first hear the A melody. Notice how it has a very complex contour and a large range. This very lengthy and complex A melody is then contrasted by a very simple B melody, which mostly consists of just a few different notes going back and forth. And then to close out the piece and also create the third section, we have a return of the A melody.